Hi everyone, welcome to Yorktivist Human Rights Festival, and we're starting with a Q&A with A.D. Cooper, from the maker of Put Away. So it's lovely to have you here. My name's Emma Taylor. I will be chairing the discussion today, and I work supporting asylum seekers and migrants and promoting and managing refugee resettlement programs. And as a large part of my role, I look at providing safe spaces for women and working to support them to find a space in UK society and understand their rights and give them the tools to access support networks and education. So absolutely delighted today that we're being joined by Put Away's writer, director and producer, A.D. Cooper. And we're really keen to have questions from any of you there. And if you've got a question, if you could pop it into the chat and put up your hand, and Vanessa will make sure that we see you. I think it'd be lovely if we could start with AD, and if you could maybe tell us a little bit about yourself and anything that you want to start by telling us about the film.
Okay, I'm from a copywriting background, so I've always been a writer and a script writer, and I started directing films about 10 years ago. I've done a whole slate of them now, and this film, whilst it's a proof of concept for a longer piece of feature film, it really came out of the misery of lockdown and what could be worse than lockdown. And I decided it would be to be sane in a mental hospital. And
so, yeah, you referred to the lockdown, and you filmed in, was it July? July last year or July 2020?
July 2020.
Yeah, so really strict COVID protocols that you were following during the filming. Can you tell us anything about this experience?
Well, we filmed it in the very sort of crumbling changing room of my local lawn bowls club, which had, and bizarrely, which had horrible, cracking plaster and rusty windows, and it kind of reflected the character's mental decay. But it was full of big lockers, and all of these had to be moved out, and the place absolutely stank. So besides the kind of COVID cleanliness protocols, there was a whole world of ingrained dirt, shall we say, from 20 years. Apparently even the female bowls players won't go in there because it smelt so bad. And then once we'd done all the filming, I then had to clean it again. That is the nature of short films. You end up doing everything. And then the bowls players complained that it smelled too fairy-like for them. They didn't like it. It smelled too clean.
Wow, what a great location to find. So is that something you'd spotted and it put you in mind of making a film, or how did that come about, finding the location?
I'd written the script and I was in pre-production just looking for a location, and I put it out on the wires. I live in West London, and I put it out on the wires. Does anyone know a kind of really grotty kind of changing room, empty space? And it came up quite quickly from one of my contacts.
Mm-hmm. That's great. That sounds fantastic. Okay, and really interesting that the COVID lockdown led you to this feeling of someone being incarcerated. Yeah. So do you mind if I read there's a quote in the film towards the end where it says, in 1964-65, an assessment was made of the 1,000 females over 60 incarcerated in Friern Hospital in North London. A third were found to be completely sane, but 2 institutionalized to be returned to society. And this was just one mental hospital. Yeah, absolutely amazing.
It was a very common practice. If you were a spirited woman or an opinionated woman or a suffragette, or you defied your husband, your father, your son, your brother, whatever, if you're a potential embarrassment to the family, if you got pregnant out of wedlock or through adultery, if you were too beautiful, then you got put away. It was very easy. You just had one doctor sign and that was it. You were in the mental hospital, and nobody ever spoke your name again.
Gosh,
that was it. You were done. So, for example, Edward the Seventh, who was famous for his mistresses, he had a mistress called Lady Mordaunt, and they were caught in flagranti by Lord Mordaunt, and he sued the king for divorce. Lady Maud's family was so appalled the idea of divorce, the disgrace of divorce then was immense. So they just declared her mad, and she spent the last 40 years of her life in a mental hospital. It's like they threw away the key. And as late as 1970s, there were lots and lots of old ladies who were perfectly sane, who were just literally forgotten.
Wow.
It was quite a normal practice. It's happening still in the Middle East. It's happening still in China and in South America. It's all a paternalistic kind of control of basically opinionated women.
Yeah.
Women who don't obey.
That whole long-running theme of taking away the voice of the woman, which can very easily be done.
I mean, how many wonderful, wonderful, extraordinary, intelligent, wonderful women were just lost? It doesn't bear thinking about, is it? It went on for the best part of 200 years. Quite normal.
Yeah.
People just disappear and were never spoken of again. You know, what happened to Bessie, the milkman's daughter? Oh, well, she got into trouble, you know, and that was it. She was gone.
Yeah.
Never spoken of again.
Yeah. Gosh. And I suppose that a lot of the time people wouldn't know where they'd gone or what had happened, and a story would be concocted. So perhaps even people that cared about those women wouldn't be looking for them and wouldn't be following up where they'd gone.
No. They would just, and it was worse than a death.
Just so many really interesting discussions that this amazing film can start. AD, are there any particular discussions, any particular topics that you would be really keen to pick up on from the film, and we can see if anyone has any questions, or we can explore those a little bit further?
Well, I mean, there's the whole thing of the fact that it's still going on. It's still going on in other cultures. It's quite normal for women to be silenced. I mean, if you think about the tennis player in China, what's happened to her? And there's various princesses in the Middle East who've gone very quiet, and people don't know quite what have happened to them. So, yeah, it's still going on. So how on earth we stop it, I have no idea.
So I suppose, is thinking about what we can do in our own sphere of influence and how we can be raising awareness of the pathways that women have, that we come into contact with, and how we can signpost people. Have you got any thoughts on that, AD?
Oh, golly, that's a huge subject. Huge subject. I'd like to think that it could have an influence. What's interesting is this film is going down very well outside of the UK, but not so well in the UK itself. Is there an embarrassment about it? Is it a bit of history that people don't want to know about?
Yeah, because it's a very recent piece of history, isn't it?
It was set in 1965. So, yeah. So why don't people want to know about it? This kind of, but it's winning. It's won 7 awards for all sorts of different reasons. People are moved by it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it really fits in with our current narrative about giving people voices, allowing people to have a voice, allowing people to speak up, and trying to address the barriers that people have. Are there any particular barriers that you feel women, perhaps in the UK, have at the moment to having a voice and speaking out?
Well, certainly, and I mean, in the film and television industry, the proportion of writers is about 15%, and the proportion of film directors has come up from 6% and is now about 13 to 15%. So women are still very much marginalized within the film industry. I don't know about other industries so much. Advertising industry, still quite low. Copywriters are about 15%. So it's still a very, very male-dominated world.
Okay.
It's curious, isn't it?
Yeah.
And there are a lot of women-focused organisations like the Excellent Women in Film and Television. They very much hope they don't need to exist, but they have to. But they have to shout for the women's corner constantly. And so that's kind of why various people are still trying to make films in the hope that women will get some kind of parity.
Yeah, And is that right from the beginning? I mean, are people not training, women not training, not studying in these areas, or are sort of equal numbers going in at the beginning?
Well, I'm one of my other jobs. I'm teaching on a university BA course for digital filmmakers, and the proportion is it's probably about 40% of women. But because it's so hard to get somewhere, and women are women will tend to apply for jobs where they're overqualified, whereas men just pile in whatever, just yeah, I can do that. Whereas women are much more cautious. They don't want to be caught out. They want to know that they can do it. And I think a lot of the attrition of women just falling away just becomes too hard. Which is so we need lots of women to support each other. So that will help.
Absolutely. Okay, thanks, AD. I'm really happy to see that we've had a question from Simon in the chat there about the prison officers in the types of establishments in the film, were they male or female, and how common was sexual abuse of inmates, whether you've got anything to come back there.
As I've written the featured version of this, I can answer that, and I've also got a very I found bizarrely on Amazon that report that's quoted in the film, and the shocking amount of sexual abuse. I mean, just shocking. Quite a lot of them would work in laundries, and they would take in stuff that would bring the hospital some income, and they would get paid a little bit of money. But then the orderlies, who were mostly men, would make them pay for their tea, so they would get the money back off them. A lot of sexual abuse, a lot of very brutal behavior, no kind of pastoral care, no kind of mental, quite a lot of them, people were mentally disturbed, or they were, you got put away if you had Down syndrome, you got put away if you had Bell's palsy, all sorts of appalling things. But there would be 100 women in a room. That was the sleeping areas, 100 women in a room. And the Freon Barnet had the longest corridor in any hospital. It was a 2-mile corridor. It's now a frightfully swanky block of flats.
Gosh. Yeah. Okay, thank you so much for that, AD. And then another question here. AD, have you got anything to say about the feature-length version of the film? Will it come to be produced? Anything?
I would love to hope so. I would love to hope so. The script is ready to go. So if any producers out there would like to read it, it's ready and available. But basically, it's mostly about 4 women who are sane, but they're institutionalized, and trying to work out whether they are what they say they are, or are they. And of course, in the end, you did become a bit mad. You couldn't really fail because you were surrounded by a lot of people who were. But there was no sense of treatment. You were either, tied up in a straitjacket or in a padded room, or sedated. That was it. They didn't really care as long as you shut up. Horrible food, and then you're being beaten or sexually abused all the time. So pretty grim.
Yeah, absolutely. And did you say 3 or 4 women in the feature?
The base, it's about 4 women.
I'd like to say we're in a very different landscape now in 2022 AD, but I'm not sure how true that is. But if Prudence in the film was incarcerated when she was 20, would you give any advice to young people now in their 20s in terms of how to recognise, how to promote, how to know their human rights, what women's rights are?
Well, I don't think a lot of people I'm teaching a number of people who are all about 21, 22. They don't know how to send an email, so I think that I shouldn't think they have any concept of their human rights. I'll answer this question. Carol Royal. Carol Royal, I found through a casting director. She's very well known. She's done a lot of theatre, enormous amount of theatre work. If you remember a TV show called Professionals, she was one of the 2 main characters' girlfriends. But she's an extraordinary actress with an enormous CV of theatre, film and TV.
Thank you, AD. And Vanessa's popped something in the chat there, AD. Oh, that's really interesting. It said that men's prisons in the US are a form of modern slavery. Any parallels that you would draw between the women portrayed in your film and men in modern US prison systems?
Oh, well, modern slavery. I mean, it's very much like the Magdalene laundries. It's very all of that time. It's very, very similar, where you're doing laundry work or cooking or whatever. But it's basically you don't escape. You're just being held, and then you might get a little bit of pocket money, but then the orderlies would take it off you. So not that you had anything to buy. I mean, you couldn't, and all your clothes were, you weren't allowed laces. You had string, and you had things called strong dresses. Not quite sure what those are, but I suppose they're quite robust. But they're all, very worn and secondhand and whatnot. So yeah. But I would think, yes, it's very much that you've basically got a workforce that can do laundry or cooking, but you don't have to pay them.
Yeah.
So very similar.
Yeah. Okay. The film obviously has a very powerful message, and Simon's just popped something in the chat there. How much have UK mental health institutions like the one in the film, and in general, changed since the film, in your view?
I think they've changed a lot. It's not it's not just one doctor's signature now. I mean, as far as I understand it, and I'm not anyway an expert on current mental hospitals, but as I understand it, you have to have 2 or 3 people have to give their opinion on someone's mental state. And also, once you're in, you're not in for good. You can go in for a while, regain your equilibrium and come out again. So it's not a death sentence kind of thing. You're not there for life. So it's and also there's much more sophisticated pharmaceuticals that can take the edge off schizophrenia or whatever it is. It's the treatment and all sorts of the understanding of mental illness has come on leaps and bounds. I mean, in recent years. So I think it's very different now. I don't think it's any nicer, but I think it's more kind. It's kinder.
Are there any topics that we haven't covered yet, AD, that you'd like to raise as a discussion starter, and see if anyone maybe has any follow-up questions?
Oh, golly, not really, to be honest.
No. Okay.
No.
Yeah. Would anyone from the group like to come in with any questions or any comments about the film? I think AD and all of us would be really interested to hear how you felt about the film and what feelings it provoked in you. And so please feel free to raise your hand. I think for myself, as I said, AD, with working with asylum seekers, a lot of whom, as people know, you see in the media a lot at the moment, that people are stuck in hotels for very long periods of time while asylum claims are processed. So I think for me, because that's my area of work, that was that kind of parallel that I saw, with people kind of stuck without power, without the power to take their own lives forward, and very much out of control. And do you think that's some of the feelings that you felt and many people felt during the lockdown?
Well, I think so, because you were so, unless you were in Downing Street, you were, to be topical, there was nothing to do, there's nowhere to go, and still people are finding going out still quite hard. They're out of the habit of going out. They're out of the habit of socializing. So I think people are very changed by the lockdown generally. I hope we never have another one.
Yeah, and very much a feeling that kind of culture and society has been sort of already forever changed by those lockdowns, and the way that we interact and the way that we work and the way that we go out is completely different now. Simon, do you want to come in?
Just, AD, do you or does anyone else know what's the proportion of people in mental health institutions in the general population? How has that changed since the film? There's a much higher proportion then.
Yes, I would think so, but most of them were saying that was the thing.
But,
and it wasn't. I mean, there were some men were put away, but much less. It was mostly women. I would think the proportion is much, and also there's lots of that kind of Victorian philanthropy where, you know, people would donate to the asylums. I mean, do you know the origin of the term "round the bend"? Which is always just used to describe people who have got mental issues.
No, I don't know the origin.
Where it comes from is in Victorian times, everyone had big swanky houses, and you could see a straight drive to this big house, whereas asylums were round a bend. They were round a hedge, round a wall. So if you went round the bend, you were going to the mental hospital because they hid them away.
Oh, how frequently was this done with the connivance of the family? There was an expression to put somebody away.
Yeah. Well, it was usually the family doing it to save, because they were the potential for a family to be embarrassed by an opinionated woman or a defiant woman. But the fact that you actually had people who were jealous and they would put someone away who was too beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's a cruel jealousy. But to get you, they basically were just got rid of.
Yeah. Okay, that's wonderful. Okay, well, thank you so much for all of those questions, Vanessa.
Sorry, you're welcome. There's no problem. You're welcome.
Sorry, I'm just going to, yeah, there we are. So one of the things that I found very, very powerful about one of the many things I found very powerful about the film is how your artistry has been able to portray, to sort of show rather than tell, a very specific side of human rights. And obviously, like, you didn't set out to say, oh yes, this is going to be a human rights film, but the human rights message in it is incredibly powerful, and I thought that was really powerful, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how that comes out in the feature film.
Me too. but it's much easier. It's a bit like parables in the Bible. It's much easier to get a message over in a story. You know,
yes.
I mean, and also when you're writing something like this, the subtextual information is as strong as the surface information.
Yes.
So you don't have to say, you know, this is a picture of a dog. You can say, so you can suggest things that actually there are two layers of meanings to things. You get twice as much communicated in the same moment, if you see what I mean.
Yeah. Thank you so much for answering all of those questions, AD. I think that's been really, really interesting for everyone, and just so many really important themes raised by the film, and I think we're all very much hoping that you'll be able to get the feature film made as well. Yeah.
Thank you very much for your kind comments. It's been very, very pleasing. When you're self-funding all projects like this, you're wondering, is anyone else going to be slightly bit interested? And actually, a lot of people have been interested. So it's been very rewarding.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, thank you everyone so much for being part of this discussion. It's been really, really interesting, and I hope that you're going to have a chance to look at some of the other films that we've got on in the film festival. Simon?
A quick question, AD. With regard to the feature, obviously you don't have to give too much away, but where would it be filmed, and would you sort of depict her life before being incarcerated? How would that be?
That's, well, I can't tell you that.
Yeah,
I can't tell you that. I can't tell you. And probably there will be a character like Prudence in the film, but she is not one of them. So there are 4 other ones, but she is typical of a woman of that era who was put away. So it's what we call in the trade selling the sizzle, not the bacon.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much, AD, and thank you so much everyone for coming along to the talk. It's been really, really enjoyable. Thank you.
Thank you very much. See you later.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good luck with it.
Thank you. Bye.